Good morning. If you were here, you would notice that my house is a wreck and I'm looking a little bit rough. But I promise there's a reason. I got a new puppy. Meet Lucy. Up she goes. Yes, it's been quite a big picture around here for the last few days. So this is what my interior decorating looks like lately. I've been completely overwhelmed with the whole puppy stuff. This is my dining room, or what used to be my dining room. You can see there's puppy accoutrement just about everywhere. Oh, and look, there's a puppy. I have literally been in my cozies for almost a week now. I just decided that when I got the new puppy that's just what I was going to do for a little while. So I pretty much blocked off the next 3 months just to spend time training the puppy, getting the puppy used to living here and that sort of thing. It's been a lot of fun, but boy, am I tired. Today I'm just going to have a home day. Here comes the cat. It's been quite the drama between the cat and the puppy. Today I'm going to be around the house. I'm going to be making a batch of my cucumber and microgreen soup, and I thought I would show you guys how I do that. I've got to make another batch of chaga tea for my chaga coffee in the morning and just do some other things around the house, and I thought that it would be fun if you were here with me. It's about 6:30 in the morning here where I am, and the cat, Dex, woke me up around 5:45. He wanted to be patted before the whole action started today. He wanted his time. And now I'm up having my coffee. The puppy is playing on the floor, and Dex is trying to figure out what to do with this new creature. Hey, Lucy. Hey, Lucy Goosey. I am literally right out of bed. I have no idea what I look like. I'm hoping it's not too frightening. I started thinking about getting a dog about a year ago, and I knew I wanted to really educate myself and learn how to train a dog and learn how to manage a dog. I have had dogs in the past, but I can't say that they were very well trained or that I had a whole lot of time to dedicate to them because I had kids and a big business and a big house and that whole thing. So I definitely wanted to go in to owning a dog this time with a little bit clear understanding of really good training. So I've been watching YouTube dog training videos for, gosh, probably a year now, just because I wanted to be really, really prepared. And I started buying dog stuff, gosh, months ago, even before I really decided I'm going to get a dog. I actually had thought that I would get a dog when I buy a house. You know, I've owned a ton of houses in my life. I actually used to buy houses, fix them up, and then, resell them or flip them. I don't own a house now, and I haven't for quite a while. I actually sold everything before I went traveling for 2 years outside of the country because I wasn't sure if I was going to come back to the U.S. or not. I did end up coming back to the U.S., and now I'm kind of settled in the Lake Tahoe area. And I'm looking at houses, but I think the housing market right now is really overpriced. It's just crazy, and I think there's probably going to be a correction. You know, when you've been around as long as I have, you realize that prices fluctuate and things go up and down, and you really can't wait until the prices aren't so inflated. I wanted to rescue a dog or get a dog from the shelter. And I have been looking, oh my gosh, you guys, for months, particularly to the local humane society in the area I live in. And gosh, I just didn't find anything but really big dogs. And I knew I wanted a dog big enough to go hiking with me and kayaking with me, but I didn't want a really big dog. I didn't want a really small dog. I kind of wanted something in between. And I just wasn't having any luck with rescues. I actually found a corgi rescue right in California. I'm in Nevada, and I was really interested in that dog, and I sent them an email and this and that, and you know what they said to me? They said, "We don't adopt out of state." And I thought, what? I'm just on the other side of the state line, really. I'm so close to California, I could be there in 25 minutes. But they weren't willing to do it, which I thought was kind of surprising. But you know, I'm sure that they have their criteria and there's a reason for that. So anyway, I was looking around at some local ads in my area and I saw these golden doodles, which is what Lucy is. Lucy is a 9-week-old golden doodle. And I thought, oh my gosh, look at how cute those are. Well, it turns out that the gal that bred Lucy is one of the leading golden doodle breeders in the country. I had no idea. And she lives right here in Carson City, really close to me. So I talked with her a little bit. I looked at her website. You know, I did some research on her. And you know what? I just thought it was sort of a God thing because it was just such an easy, obvious choice to go ahead and pick up Lucy. So I met this guy in the parking lot of the local Tractor Supply, and my girlfriend Patty went with me, and she brought 2 of the puppies. And I chose Lucy because she's smaller. I want a medium-sized dog, but I want it kind of medium-small because right now I live in an apartment. And if I'm going kayaking, I'm going to need a little bit smaller dog to stay on the boat with me so there's not weight issues and balance issues and that sort of thing. So Lucy right now, I don't know how much she weighs. I suppose I should do that. But she's here. It's been about a week. I'm exhausted. My house is a wreck. But I'm excited about the journey ahead. Today I'm making a fresh batch of my chaga tea. If you haven't heard about chaga tea or if you didn't see my chaga tea video, I'll go ahead and link it for you guys. It's super easy to do, and what I do is I have a pitcher that I keep my chaga tea in. So I fill up about 1.5 pitchers because you lose a lot during the process, you know, the water evaporates. So what I'll do is when the chaga tea is done, I will fill up my pitcher and then I'll also fill up my water kettle on the stove. So I have lots of chaga tea that's going to last me probably a little bit more than a week. So I have my crock pot filled up and I just keep my chaga chunks in the freezer. You can reuse them over and over again. I pretty much know it's time to change out my chaga chunks when the tea is really light. When you first start using them, the tea is really very dark, almost a black color. And then it continues to get lighter as you continue to use the chunks. So I just put the chaga chunks into the crock pot water. I turn it on high and I generally run it for about 8 hours. And when I'm done, I just let it cool down and I put it back in my pitcher. Chaga tea is one of the most antioxidant rich foods on the planet that has ever been identified. And it is an immune system modulator, and we're all really concerned about our immune systems these days. The good thing that's come out of this whole health kerfluffle is I think that we're all much more aware that we need to take care of our bodies and really, really coddle our immune system and make sure it's nice and healthy. That's why I like the chaga tea so much, because what I do, I use that chaga water as the base for my morning coffee. So I'm not only getting my coffee, which I love, but I'm getting that incredible antioxidant benefits and the immune system modulation. And there's a ton of other stuff in chaga coffee. If you don't know about it, you really need to find out about it because it is so good for your health. A Kong filled with natural sugar-free peanut butter. I'll tell you, it's the ticket. That'll give you at least 20 minutes of free time. My order from Thrive Market came in. I love Thrive Market. This video isn't sponsored by Thrive Market. They have no idea who I am, but gosh, I sure know who they are. Let's see what I ordered. I don't even quite remember anymore. One thing I can say about Thrive Market, their shipping is so fast. Honestly, I feel like I placed my order and 20 minutes later, somebody's knocking on my door with my box. It really is quick. It takes just a couple of days. And you know what? I've been ordering from them for a while, and it's always been that way. They're really good. So here we have some organic lentils. I love Indian food. I also ordered some organic raw pine nuts. I love to toast pine nuts and then put them on my salads. So delicious. More lentils. Oh gosh, this is one of my favorite things from Thrive Market. This is their organic brown rice, and this is cooked. So all you have to do is just sort of heat it up in a pan, and I use this with sauteed vegetables. It's so delicious. I order my olive oil from Thrive Market. Sometimes I get it out if I see something that's really good at a good price. They have great olive oil at really good prices. So love the olive oil. And then this bag is filled with, oh my gosh, one of my favorite treats. I love chocolate, but I don't eat sugar anymore, so I need to find sugar-free chocolate. And I love the Lily's brand. I get their chocolate chips, both the semi-sweet and the milk chocolate. And I love the chocolate bars. I end up having just like 3 or 4 squares of this every day as a little treat, and it's really good. You can actually get Lily's off of Amazon, but what I've discovered is that often the ones on Amazon, they're old and they've got that kind of white powdery covering on them. When you order from Thrive Market, or at least it's been my experience, it's always fresh, always in really good shape. So I get my lilies from Thrive Market, and you can see I bought quite a few because I don't like to run out. Today I'm cooking up a batch of one of my favorite things to eat. Without a doubt, it is cold cucumber and microgreen soup. Now, don't go yuck right away, because I guarantee you would love it if you could taste it. I wish you could come over to my house and have a cup of it with me. It is so delicious. I've actually been making this recipe for years. I originally found it, and it's from Emerald Lagasse, and I'll go ahead and have it listed down below. I first found this recipe when I was living with my oldest daughter, Heather, up in Portland, Oregon, and I tried it and we both loved it, and it's been a favorite ever since. I recently kind of upended the recipe a little bit and made a twist, and now I'm adding microgreens into the recipe along with the cucumbers. I have been doing this recipe for so long, I don't even look at the recipe anymore, and I just sort of throw things in as I feel like I'm in the mood for it. Sometimes I use more of one ingredient, sometimes I use more of another ingredient. What I found out is there's almost no way to make this and not have it be delicious. So I'm going to be putting together my recipe today. I will show you what I'm adding as I'm adding it, but you know what? I'm not going to write it down, just because I sort of just throw it together and add what I have on hand and mix it together. It always turns out so very good. One of the tips I want to give you is, because I make a big batch of it and I store it in large jars, I'll show you that at the very end, I mix it up in a busboy tub. You can get these right off of Amazon. I don't have a bowl big enough to house all the ingredients before I blend it, so I use this busboy tub to throw everything in here. Today I'm going to be using cucumbers, and I think the recipe calls for 8 to 10 cucumbers. I only picked up 4 because these cucumbers are huge. Today I'm also adding a couple of avocados, and the reason I'm doing this is I think it's going to make it really yummy and a lot smoother and richer. In addition, these avocados need to be eaten, so I'm going to go ahead and throw them in the soup. This morning I just harvested my 3 trays of microgreens, so these are going to go in the soup as well. I'm going to use about half of the microgreens in the soup, and the other half are going to get stored in my refrigerator for use in salads over the next week. I also have an orange pepper and 2 jalapenos, a bunch of green onions, and all of these vegetables here are organic, so no chemicals in this soup. I have 3 different types of fresh herbs, and the recipe calls, I think, for 1 tablespoon of fresh herbs of each of these. You know what I do? I throw the whole bunch into the recipe. I love the rich, intense flavor of all these herbs. They smell so good and they taste delicious. So I have dill, and I'll be using this whole bunch of dill in the soup. I have mint. I love mint. Love to grow mint. This is so easy to grow. If you haven't grown mint, it's super easy and super handy to have around. And I have a full bunch of cilantro. In the soup goes organic olive oil, and I have some white vinegar here. I usually use white wine vinegar. I'm all out, but this will work just fine. And for seasonings, I don't measure those either. You'll see later on as I'm throwing it together. I just sort of whip it up, and then I taste the soup when it's all done and add anything else that I think it needs. I'll be using fresh ground pepper and Himalayan pink salt, cumin and garlic powder, a little bit of cayenne pepper, and smoked paprika. I know the original recipe called for some of Emerald's seasoning. I don't know if he's still producing that seasoning anymore. And to be honest with you, when I first started making the soup, I originally bought that seasoning, but then I just started throwing things in that I had in the kitchen, and it still turns out just lovely. I'm gonna get my bucket right here and start preparing all the vegetables. When I'm chopping the vegetables, I don't really worry about getting them perfect or getting them a really small dice, because it's all going to go into the blender at the end and be blended smooth. So I just want the chunks small enough that they'll incorporate into the blender easily. For the cilantro and dill, I just rinse them off. I pretty much use the entire thing with the exception of the heavy stems at the bottom. The flavor of these fresh herbs is so delicious in the soup. It's just so yummy. With the mint, because the stems are a little bit heavier on up the plant, I actually just go through and pick off all the leaves. It takes a few minutes, but I think it just ends up with a nicer soup. Because I'm adding that avocado, I've decided to throw in a little bit of lime juice. I think that will just really spice up the flavor. Now that I have my vegetables all chopped and prepared, and you can see why I use this big bucket, because there's so much in here already. Now it's time to add the organic, plain, unsweetened yogurt. In the recipe, it has half yogurt, I believe, and half sour cream. I've gone ahead and just made it all yogurt because I want those really good organic probiotics in my diet on a daily basis. So this, combined with the microgreens, combined with all the vegetables and the herbs, really makes this a very, very nutritious dish. I use whole milk yogurt all the time because I want those good fats. Now I'm going to add my microgreens, and I'm going to take about half of this bucket of microgreens and add it to the soup mixture. And the rest I'm going to store and use for salad during the week. I'm going to stir it around a little bit before I add the seasonings. So you can see here that I've just given it a rough mix. I'm not really worried about incorporating all the ingredients right now because they're all going to go into a blender, and then those blenderfuls are going to go back in here. I'm going to be able to mix it up and adjust the seasonings then. So first, a little bit of sea salt, fresh ground pepper, garlic powder, a little bit of cayenne pepper, some smoked paprika. This is going to give it a really deep, rich flavor. And top it off with a generous serving of cumin. I forgot to add one of my favorite fresh ingredients. That's fresh garlic. I add anywhere from, oh gosh, 3 to 6 cloves, depending on how I'm feeling. And I love garlic. It tastes so good and it's so good for us. And again, I'm not going to worry about getting a perfect dice on the garlic because it's going to get all blended up in the blender. I just want to break it up a little bit so that it's easier for that blender to chop it. Now I'm going to add the olive oil, and again, I don't measure, I just sort of eyeball it and get as much in there as I think is really necessary to make the recipe work. I'm going to go ahead and just finish off this container, and then I'm going to splash a little bit of vinegar. The vinegar really gives it that bit of tang that is so delicious. That was probably about a half a cup of vinegar. And just mix that around again. And now it's time to pull out the blender. One thing I've learned, because this recipe can be a little messy, is to fill up the blender in the sink, because when things drop, it drops into the sink. Blending this takes a little bit. I like to keep the blender running until it is really smooth and all those little bits and pieces are blended up into a nice creamy mixture. Then I pour the mixture into these large jars, which I'm going to store it in. But you're going to see I'm going to put all of it back into this big bucket at the very end, mix it up, and adjust the seasonings. I've mixed up my last blender full of the soup, and I have rinsed out that original bucket that I used. Now I'm going to put all the soup into this bucket, stir it around, because each batch in the blender is going to have a little bit different ingredients in it. I want everything to mix all together. Now I'm just going to mix it all up, make sure it's well blended, and it's time for the taste test. So good, so good. It needs just a little bit more salt. And I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit more cumin. So I have my 2 jars of soup all ready and done. I know it's really tempting to dig right in and have a cup right away, but the flavors don't really develop fully until it sits at least overnight. So I'm going to go ahead and put these in the refrigerator, and they'll be ready for me to have a nice cup for lunch tomorrow. These 2 jars generally last me about 2 weeks. It is such a yummy little treat to have every day. It's not only delicious, it is so good for you. My chaga tea mixture is all done, so I just go ahead and put it in this pitcher, and then that goes in the refrigerator. And then the chaga chunks that I used, I put these in a plastic bag. They go in the freezer and I reuse them. This is probably the 3rd time that I've used these chaga chunks, and you can see the tea is about a medium color. The first batch is generally really dark, and then it gets continually lighter as I continue to use the chunks. And once the tea is like a really light brown, that's when I change the chunks out and start with fresh. I have been hand feeding little Lucy Lou here. It gives us a chance to really bond and for her to really start paying attention to me. And we also are just working with her commands. So I hold the food in my hand with my thumb over it, and she doesn't get it until she sits. And then she gets to eat it. So this is a little way that we really work on her behavior, and she doesn't get it. There we go. Good girl, good sit. Yes, yes. And she's a little puppy, about 9 weeks old now, so she's 1 day older today. I want to thank you for stopping by and joining me today for this little cozy day at home. It was a lot of fun to have you here with me. I appreciate you stopping by, and oh boy, I appreciate you. There we go. Yes, good girl. Make it a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye now.